Hello, welcome to this week's edition of Affaircare. We're going over the top topics that people just love to read about on the Affaircare website, and it is understanding your loyal spouse. Now, understandably, this page gets a lot of traffic because when the loyal spouse finds out about the affair, there is a lot going on. And sometimes it is very hard to explain to the disloyal spouse what is going on and why. I will go ahead and make a link for you in the, if you're like watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description. On the blog, it'll be in the, in the description part. If you're on iTunes or on Stitcher, you would go to Affaircare articles, and it's understanding your loyal spouse. Or if you come to the website affaircare.com, you can also just go to the little search guy. It looks like a magnifying glass, and put in the word understanding, and it'll be right there. So on this particular topic, I basically broke it up into 3 sections. So what this particular article is all about is that once your loyal spouse understands what happened and it has discovered the adultery, then there is it's like a tsunami, right, of things that kind of hit them over, and all of a sudden it's like this big wave of stuff that happens, and it kind of keeps coming in. Many times what happens is it seems like they're bouncing around from one emotion to the other, and they're kind of unpredictable. Their nerves are frayed, they can't sleep, they can't really eat. It's kind of like they're a little bit of an obsessive mess. If you see that that's the way that your loyal spouse is reacting, please don't think it's unusual. That's actually pretty normal and natural. For the disloyal spouse, on our side, we don't ever think that we're going to get caught. We don't stop and think, I wonder what will happen when I get caught. So when they're confronted, we know what's going on, so it's not a surprise to us. To our loyal spouses, it is a surprise. Then when they are hit with this overwhelming, onslaught of emotions and distress and whatnot, we kind of wonder, what the heck's wrong with them? Is what they're feeling going to be permanent like this, or what's wrong? So just to let you know, yeah, that is pretty normal, actually. They will probably kind of wallow in it and hit bottom, and that, I know it's like terminology that is sort of not very precise, but you'll see they kind of, it takes them a little while to kind of process what this all means, and so consequently they do wallow for a little while, and gradually they'll hit a point where they're like, okay, I'm done now, and then they start to return to a new kind of normal. It's not the way that it ever was before. So the simple answer is yes, it is real. Yes, it is temporary. But recovering from something like that takes a long time. Imagine in your head, it's basically like recovering from a death in the family. You know how people have that grieving process. It's very similar to that, actually. So take a couple of quick breaths. Let's kind of review a couple of fundamental facts. What you're seeing in your loyal spouse is absolutely a normal reaction to basically a life-changing event. Your spouse is going to need to grieve as long as it takes them in order to recover. Some people grieve differently than others. Some people take a moment, process it, and when I say a moment, I mean they do it relatively quickly, they use their thoughts, and then they're able to move on. Other people do not go as quickly, and so they need to take as long as they need to take in order to kind of get past the grief. And then your side, you can be a positive influence on their recovery and consequently help them to go as quickly as they can by doing a couple of things. So note to self, the first mission is going to be to learn. You want to learn about what they're experiencing and why, and that will help them. In this article, I kind of broke it up into 3 sections. The first section is basically all about the different kind of emotions that they'll be feeling. It'll change to this, to this, to this. They change around. There's like a not necessarily a pattern to them, but they feel kind of all of these all at once. And you can imagine that feeling that many emotions all at once is pretty overwhelming. Okay, the next part, section 2, is what else can you do to kind of ease their pain and relieve their stress, help, in the sense of helping them to recover. And then the last part, section 3, is what are the next stages after they work through all of this? What happens next, basically. So let's start with section 1. Section 1 is a description of all the different kinds of emotions that they're going to be going through all at once. I call it the wild patchwork because that's really what it's like. If you can envision like each emotion is a square on a quilt, it kind of actually makes the whole quilt, but each one is its own little patch, and they go together in different kind of ways. It's very weird. The first emotion they're going to feel is disbelief, and this is primarily, it's kind of like denial, right? Step 1 of the grief process. They're not going to believe it at first. They're going to like, God, I want to wake up from this. It's a nightmare. And to some degree also there's that feeling of like, I want it to be back the way it was. So they're going to at times just not believe that it really happened. If some time elapsed between the discovery of your affair and confronting you, it's conceivable you might miss the disbelief part because they kind of they've discovered it and then they went a while, maybe built up some evidence or whatever. Well, they believe it now. So you might miss this part. I'm just letting you know. Okay. Another emotion that they feel, that's in the spectrum there is shock. Kind of numb and dazed. And I know for my own personal self, it felt, especially in the earliest days, like my body was going through the motions of being alive, but there was no part of me that was in there anymore. It just felt really, like frozen is a really good word for it, just sort of numb. It's mechanical and robotic and just not really there. Then another emotion that they'll feel is, I called it reality, because what that means is like being hit with the bomb. Oh my God, that really happened. That's not just a horrible nightmare. They're actually starting to feel it. And to your view, it may feel like when they're getting hit with a ton of bricks of reality, that they're kind of getting worse and they're acting worse and whatnot. That's okay. Kind of let them go with that. Don't discount the fact that they might feel like ashamed because you committed adultery, because they're going to have to now admit to themselves and their family and their friends that they were married to someone who was a cheater. And in a weird way, they feel ashamed about that. So at this point, it's going to be kind of hard. Don't accuse them of being irrational or being crazy or any of that. They're being hit with a ton of bricks of reality. So instead, at this point, you want to be sort of supportive and understanding that, commend them if they're going to seek help, that kind of thing. Because you want them to, that's a way to help them through that. Okay, they're going to feel confusion. This one, again, you're hit with so many things at once that you can't hold it all together. So they'll kind of feel disoriented. They can't remember. Back in the day, you could easily remember which bills to pay, how much the amount would be, which account, and then now they can't keep all that in their head because they're just disoriented is a really good way to describe that. It's very upsetting to them. So what you want to do is you want to bear with them. You want to be gentle and helpful. If they're like forgetting some of the stuff that they usually would remember, they're going to feel very frustrated about that. So help them find their keys. Help them find the bill that, like, I just set it down. They're going to like be all upset about the fact that I know I just set it down and it's not here. Help them find it where actually they carried it with them into the other room. Just don't say anything. Just help them. It's sort of is it might get magnified into a trigger, but for now it's more like a confusion. There's definitely going to be physical symptoms. Physical symptoms can range depending on the person, but usually two very typical ones are they can't sleep and they can't eat. I always suggest to people, if you can't sleep, get up and try reading a really boring technical manual or something. If that doesn't put you to sleep, maybe you're thinking of something you need to express, so take time and write. And then if you still are not falling asleep after you've expressed that, maybe you're just awake. So you might as well do something somewhat productive, like don't vacuum in the middle of the night, but maybe you could do filing or fold laundry, little stuff like that. If you can't eat, this is my personal suggestion. I always tell people two things. Just get some soup. I know that sounds crazy, but when you cry a lot, you have that lump in your throat. You can't swallow past it. So get some soup. It's at least a little bit nutritious, and it feels like something kind of warm in your stomach, which is a little bit soothing. disloyal spouse, go get some soup. Also, some very typical physical things would be like aches and pains, because if they hold their stress in their shoulders, for example, obviously they're going to be very tense. They're going to hold that in the shoulders. They're going to ache a lot. People sometimes will develop headaches, migraines, because they're holding their tension in. Obviously, a lot of people feel sick to their stomach. They want to vomit. They might have constipation or diarrhea. So if you see some of these things, you can encourage them and help them, but don't nag them. Instead, help them with preparing soup and things that they can eat. If they're really having trouble, maybe help them get a doctor appointment, that kind of thing. If they're not exercising, initiate taking walks together. But remember that part of the problem is this couplehood thing, so you want to encourage them. Okay, another emotion they're going to experience a lot is crying. Deep emotions will sort of like well up all of a sudden, and they'll be crying for no apparent reason. And crying is often just a release of that deep emotion. So, oddly enough, just so you know, although it may be uncomfortable for you disloyal people to see, it can really help. When they cry, don't just avoid them, because it makes you uncomfortable. They're experiencing something, usually something very deep and sad. So when they cry, give them a shoulder to lean on. Maybe a little hug. You don't want to be too crazy. You don't want to drown them, but sometimes a hug can be really something. Or holding their hand. Maybe they don't feel like being close because they're angry but also crying. That's okay. Maybe hold their hand just so they know that you are there, and probably a great opportunity right there to apologize. A real apology, not, I'm sorry. That's the one that means, geez, we should stop this because you're making me uncomfortable. That's not cool. Okay, self-control is another emotion that's going to kind of take a hit right now. A loyal spouse, having just discovered, will control their emotions sort of like because they have to go to work, or because they have to take care of the kids, or to simply get a rest from the pain of it all. But it can seem like they're stuffing it down, or on the other side, it can seem like they try to, and then they just blow up, the vent, right? So be aware that too much self-control is like stuffing it or storing up the anger. And then when it breaks, it's like a dam breaking. That's when you have the venting. So don't be surprised if they do kind of fall into that pattern of lashing out at you. Sometimes that is a way to release the anger they've been storing up. I would say, though, that it's probably more healthy for both of you if they release their anger as it comes up, rather than storing up a bunch and then lashing out and being abusive. That's not really going to help build anything. Okay, this one is a great one. The next little emotion they're going to feel the need to know. Probably they will ask you 1,000 questions over and over and over again. It's going to seem like no matter how many times you answer it, it's never going to be enough. On this one, a lot of times different people have different needs. So the thing to bear in mind, the little example that I give, it's like a puzzle. On the disloyal side, they knew they were cheating. They have all the puzzle pieces put in, and the images of them as a cheater, and they knew that it was there. The loyal spouse, however, only has some of the puzzle pieces, and they can't really see clearly. And when they can't see the picture clearly, they don't know how to make decisions in their life, or how to act, or all kinds of things. So what they try to do when they ask these questions is, I need a piece of this puzzle so that I can put it in here. If you are refusing to answer, then this is going to hinder their ability to understand and make decisions and figure out where they are in their life. So they're going to feel like you're keeping them in the dark, and they still can't trust you, like you have something to hide still. On the other hand, if you answer their questions endlessly on and on, it can turn into what feels like the Spanish Inquisition. You're being interrogated. So in this instance, I do definitely recommend that you don't hold anything back. Answer completely truthfully. Anything you remember, tell them. Don't say I don't remember when you remember. Don't omit anything. Absolutely don't do that. That is bad. Or hide details or any of that. But as a couple, you might say that you agree once a day they can ask you any question they want, and you will answer completely truthfully, and after an hour you will stop, because then that way it's not like feeling like the Spanish Inquisition endlessly going on and on, but also the other person, the loyal spouse, will be getting their questions answered and filling in the pieces of the puzzle so they can have an image that they can see. An emotion, but also a question that you're going to get asked a lot is why? Why did you do this? Okay? Now, they may or may not expect an answer, so that might be a rhetorical question. So try to figure out if it is rhetorical or not. If they're actually looking for an answer, what will probably happen is if you say, well, at the time it was feeling like to me like you were shutting me out, and then they're going to say, oh, you're blame shifting on me. So what you want to do when you tackle the why is look at it honestly, look at yourself, this loyal spouse, and try to find out what was it within me that was a weakness where, like, here's the little spot where I kind of veered off track. And also, what was the weakness within you that kind of allowed you to keep making those little justifications to cross the line? This is not about the things that they did that were contributing to the poor state of the marriage prior to the affair. This is about how could you cheat? So be aware. Sometimes, even if they're not verbalizing this to you, they are probably asking themselves why over and over and over again. Usually that is more so a cry of pain to say, kind of like they're wondering to themselves, how could this happen to me? Rather than looking for a big answer. If you do answer, though, the answer should be, I chose this. I did that. I have a weakness here. Okay? Got it? All right. Another one that another emotion they're going to feel quite a lot is injustice. They're going to feel like it's so unfair. You invited possibly sexually transmitted diseases in, and you took the risk of risking their health without even letting them know. You took the risk of breaking up your family, and you didn't give them even a chance to contribute to their own life. They might even consider having a revenge affair to make it fair, which is crazy thinking, but by the same token, you can kind of understand it because they want to bring some balance. Right now, they feel like they have no control over their life. You took all that control away, and they want to get some of that control of their own life back. So in a way, like I put on the site, it feels to them sort of like they were a rape victim, and they're sitting at court, and court is saying not guilty to the rapist. How could you let that happen? Part of the problem with infidelity is that there really is not going to be the kind of justice that they think of, like equality, right? In real life, the disloyal spouse committed a crime against the entity of the marriage. They harmed it. And it would not make sense for the loyal spouse to then commit the same crime or to descend to behaving like a criminal against the marriage. So in real life, there's not going to be justice. But what happens is the loyal spouses will gradually kind of come to realize this on their own. And they need to understand that you, disloyal, that you understand that to them this is gigantically unfair, and how it kind of will plagues their thoughts, that they may feel guilty and shamed and unfair. Okay, another emotion that loyal spouses often feel is inadequacy. Imagine, their self-esteem it's not just destroyed, like broken, right? It's shattered. They'll feel like belittled and insignificant, unlovable, because you had the chance to be with them, and what they offered you was not enough. You went somewhere else. It's like you took everything that was their best, and they spent years giving it to you, and you just crumbled it up and tossed it off like it meant nothing. They're going to question their own value. They're going to question if any of the years and the love before was actually true. They're going to question if anybody can love them. This is one that's going to be really helpful. What you want to do is let them know that you choose them more than anybody else, above anybody else. Even if they don't ask, make it clear that you are choosing them. Be genuine about it. Actually do choose them, because you don't want to be false about like that false flattery or anything. Be genuine, but over and over again, choose them, and then kind of point out that you're choosing them on purpose. This one we kind of touched on a little bit. The next thing that they'll do is repeating over and over again. They'll review the story. They'll review their questions. They'll review over and over, thinking the same. And here's why. Repeating kind of helps them to absorb the truth of what happened, the reality. Sometimes there's going to be parts of them that like sort of don't really want to admit it. So repeating, it helps them, nope, this is what really happened. This is what, it kind of helps them get it. Especially if your story is consistent and it's been filled in truthfully, it'll help them fill in gaps and stuff. Gradually the repeating will become, it's a complete story, and then they repeat less because they're kind of absorbing it. If you do not fill in the gaps, if you don't answer truthfully, then they can't process it. It'll go slower. They will continue to repeat. Every time they get that, it's like they start over. So honestly, the fastest way is just tell them the real truth, let them repeat it, gradually they'll sort of absorb it. Another thing that's very, very, very typical, I guess it's the feeling, is idealizing. And so this would be sort of like they'll look back on the past and they'll go, but we were so happy, and they look back on all the good things, and that's not utterly bad because that will help them to get past this really bad portion. But they kind of forget that before the affair came along, things were messed up. This is partly their little way, as I mentioned, of kind of getting over the badness of the affair. And so what you want to do as a disloyal is assure them that you also remember the good times, and that you remind them that in the future you want to have good times again. That right now might not be that fantastic, but you are here, you remember the good times in the past, you want good times in the future, and now we're working right now to get there. Okay, another pretty common emotion that people will feel is frustration. Pretty much people sort of have a dream of what I think my life is going to kind of go like, right? And they think, well, we'll have this business and we'll have this, and either because of the affair, a bunch of funds were lost, things were, a lot of their dreams that they thought were going to happen just aren't going to happen anymore. They might feel like you are not coping with their grieving process right. They might wonder are we ever going to recover and get any better? So they're going to have some frustration. Again, in this instance, the best thing that a disloyal can do is to sort of be empathetic, let them express that feeling of frustration and God, are we ever going to get any better? And yeah, reassure them that you think, hey, it's a process, we're doing okay, we're still on the path, it does take time, and kind of remind them that you do still choose them as their life partner and it will get better. So that's helpful to them to get over that. Okay, another emotion, we have so many of them to go over, really, it's crazy. Bitterness. And now you can understand this one. They're going to resent and probably hate the affair partner. Sometimes what people do is they completely resent and hate their own spouse for what they did. And sometimes they don't really want to hate their spouse, so they turn all of that resentment and hatred toward the affair partner. So don't be surprised either way if they are just horribly bitter toward you, or literally like just horribly bitter toward your affair partner. This is pretty natural. It's kind of a way of protecting their love for you. So what happens is if they sort of do like you still, and they just like hate your affair partner, what they're kind of doing is the anger that should have been directed at you is actually going to the affair partner, and they're sort of trying to protect their love. In early stages, this can kind of be helpful because if they completely blasted you, it would really harm the love that they have for you. So what you want to do is expect that their anger for you will gradually surface, and it will gradually be pointed more toward you than toward the affair partner. The next emotion to discuss that your loyal spouse will be feeling is waiting. Now, I know this, it sounds a little bit unusual, but what it is at the very beginning, basically right after discovering this extremely traumatic thing in their life, it seems like they've moved on maybe a couple steps from that. The initial shock is wearing off a little bit. To the loyal side, it doesn't seem like their, the life that they had, their joy that they had in life is not returning. So they feel like they are just in limbo. They're waiting. They're waiting for the marriage to be fixed. They're waiting for you to commit to them. They're waiting to feel happy again. Just waiting. Actually, that seems oddly enough fairly tiring to feel like you're in limbo and just sort of waiting and don't really have a big say in your own life and what's going to happen. So one of the things that can really help here in this one is helping them find things that they really do find stimulating and enjoyable. For example, if your spouse really likes a certain, let's say, recreation together, it would be a great idea to go ahead and do that with them, because it will hold their interest and bring a little bit of joy back into their life. And gradually they'll start to feel like, oh my gosh, I actually felt good today. And it's a little bit surprising, but that's okay. Let them, it'll help them to kind of get past this waiting feeling, the limbo. Another thing that this is going to go on pretty much from the beginning of when they first discover it, probably as they recover till the day when you can say, yeah, we're former. And that would be emotions in conflict. Because what's going to happen is, it's sort of a weird irony of healing, is that the person who did the harm is the person who has to participate in the healing of the harm. The loyal spouse is going to be all vulnerable to the very person who did the hurt. And you feel conflicted about that because it's weird. The conflict also is like a balancing act. On the one hand, the disloyal spouses can find it kind of hard to stay engaged with the loyal spouses because the way that they're behaving is pretty unusual and it's a little bit hurtful. But by the same token, they are the ones who caused the pain. So the key here is to stay engaged, nevertheless, to just recognize that this emotions and conflict thing is kind of natural, and all at the same time, as they're moving along this healing process, they'll probably get to a point where they kind of feel like angry at you but love you at the same time. And they also feel like happy and sad at the same time. They feel hopeful and hopeless at the same time. That's okay. That's the part where they're beginning to see some hope. They're beginning to see, and then it just feels like I said, conflicted. Stick with it. Stay engaged. Stay with them, and be supportive, and keep going. Keep talking. Okay, the last one that I wanted to talk about, the last kind of typical thing that loyals go through is triggers. You may have heard the term. Triggers are anything that basically reminds them and brings back the pain of the initial discovery. If you're thinking of an example, like in post-traumatic stress, it would be like a sound will trigger them going directly back to whatever this traumatic thing was that occurred, that scared them or hurt them or whatever. So in this instance, there's going to be particular dates or places, items, music, sounds, even sometimes smells, that can instantly trigger that feeling like they're right back there at the trauma. This is just my own personal opinion. Whilst it's wisdom to have some understanding about, like, hey, humans typically do this and it's not necessarily unnatural or whatever. I don't think it is very wise to allow triggers to be an excuse for bad behavior. So I'm not saying that because a trigger occurred, that loyal spouses just have, here's your blank check to treat your disloyal like crap and behave badly. And you get to do that for free because they did it for free. No, I think it's reasonable for the disloyal spouse to kind of understand, hey, this is what that is, this is what's happening. But likewise, on the loyal spouse side, even share, like, yep, I heard the song and it reminded me of the affair and I kind of flipped out. But that doesn't mean that you have the justification to behave badly. So you need to be disciplining your own self to still treat your disloyal spouse with respect and caring and kindness, even though you feel triggered. So let's just discuss a couple of triggers. Some very typical triggers are things like the dates, maybe the date that they actually discovered it. We call that D-Day, Discovery Day. Any gifts that the disloyal got from their affair partner. Letters, postcards, whatever, souvenirs on any trips you took, that kind of stuff. It can be certain places, such as if the affair took place at XYZ Motel, the next time you drive past XYZ Motel, chances are pretty good your loyal spouse will trigger from that place, if that makes sense. Or if you constantly were taking your affair partner to a certain restaurant for lunch, and that's like how the affair started and continued, why then chances are pretty good that that place will be a trigger for your spouse. So one good thing that a disloyal spouse can do would be obviously to get rid of all the reminders of the affair, all the gifts, sometimes the clothing you wear, any certain perfume that might be triggery. Look, I don't mean this mean, but it's things. You can get something new. You can, even if it's my favorite outfit. Well, that's what you were wearing when they discovered that you were cheating. So let that outfit go. You can get a new one. Because if you keep them, that leaves the impression that you kind of have this fond memory and it's like a keepsake. You want to make, by demonstrating that you're willing to throw it out and it means nothing to you, what you're demonstrating is a willingness to completely let go of that memory of your life, that part of your life. One of the things that can be helpful for your partner is to learn from them the things that trigger them. So for example, let's say a certain song triggers them. If you know that, just for a while remove it from your playlist, or if you hear it start, let them know, hey honey, that song is starting. I know that this sometimes does trigger you. We can turn it off for a few minutes, or would you like to try to get through it? When the trigger is happening, that's a good time to express to them that you choose them, and maybe the goal would be to help them get to a point where the trigger is not setting them off anymore, but they kind of like reclaim the trigger. So as an example of the loyal spouse reclaiming, what it would be is, let's say, be classy here and say that it was lunch dates at McDonald's, and you took the affair partner to the McDonald's that's right by your house, and that's what you used to meet them there at McDonald's, and then you guys would sneak off to the affair partner's apartment. Okay, so you go to the McDonald's, and your spouse is all triggered by McDonald's now, which is, that's the way it goes. So what you can do, instead of, for a while, just don't go to McDonald's because it kind of hurts them. Then maybe begin to speak with them about the trigger, which is, speaking about McDonald's, and then say, okay, let's try to reclaim McDonald's. And so you're going to make a decision. You talk about it together, and you say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the McDonald's that's our neighborhood. We're going to hold hands as we walk in. We're going to stand in the middle of the McDonald's and say, this is our McDonald's. And then we're going to sit down together and make out for about 5 minutes in front of other people in public so that everybody knows that you're with him and he's with you. And then you're going to go and kind of like mark your territory, right? You're going to go up and you're going to do your order, and you're going to sit there and kind of continue to be really obvious that you're claiming this land. This is yours now. Does that make sense? So you want to do something, maybe that put your hand around them, squeeze their hand, give them a hug. And the idea is to remember that triggers can be there for most of your life, but you can, and don't say, well, it's been a year, you should be over it by now. That's never, ever going to help. But what can help is if they want to try to release the trigger, to help them to think of a way to reclaim the trigger. Another good example is, let's say that you brought the affair partner to your home and you made love on your marital bed, and now your spouse is flipping out because their bed is tainted. Okay, so one way you say to reclaim the bed would be, we're going to repaint the bedroom so that it's a whole different color and it doesn't remind you every time you're in it that also the affair partner was there. And we're going to put the bed on this side of the room and have different color and everything. And we're going to actually get rid of this bed, because this bed, we're going to get a whole and differently new entire style of bed. And then you might do something like that, because what you're trying to do is reclaim the bedroom. This bedroom is not the room it was when there was adultery going on. This is a new bedroom now. This is my bedroom. See what I mean? So you want to help them to reclaim, like, if you think, like dogs marking their territory, you kind of want to do that. That's the ideal thing, so that the trigger is not bothered in their whole life.